Marcus Chen walked through the dirty streets of Port Nexus with his shoulders hunched against the cold, recycled air that blew through the station corridors. The space station was a massive structure floating at the edge of civilized space, where hundreds of alien species came to trade and conduct business that was not always legal. Marcus worked as a maintenance technician in the lower levels where pipes leaked and machines broke down constantly. The pay was terrible, but it kept him fed. He carried a small bag with his daily rations from the station cafeteria. 2 protein bars and a bottle of water. Not much, but it was all he got. As he walked past the market district, he saw aliens of every shape and size. Tall, insectoid Vrexians clicked their mandibles as they haggled over prices. Blue-skinned Taurians laughed loudly at some joke. A group of furry Kelroth merchants displayed colorful fabrics on floating platforms. Then Marcus saw her in a dark alley between 2 warehouses. A small figure sat hunched against the wall. She wore tattered robes that were so dirty the original color was impossible to determine. A deep hood covered her face completely. Her whole body seemed to shake slightly as if she was cold, or sick, or both. Around her, the ground was littered with trash and puddles of something Marcus did not want to identify. Most people walked past without a second glance. Some aliens actually spat in her direction or kicked debris at her as they passed. One large Krellian enforcer with gray scales and 4 arms laughed cruelly as he threw an empty container at the beggar's feet. Marcus stopped walking. He did not know why he stopped. There were beggars all over Port Nexus. The station had no real government and no social services. If you could not work, you starved. That was just how things were. Marcus had his own problems and barely enough food for himself. The smart thing would be to keep walking. But something made him turn toward the alley. He approached slowly. The figure did not move or acknowledge him. Up close, Marcus could see the robes were not just dirty, but torn in many places. Thin, wrapped hands poked out from the sleeves. The beggar seemed small and fragile. Marcus knelt down and held out one of his protein bars. The hooded figure's head lifted slightly. A weak voice came from within the hood, speaking in broken common tongue, the language most species used for basic communication.
Us.
It sounded female and surprised. "Yeah," Marcus said. "You look like you need it more than me." Slowly, the wrapped hands reached out and took the protein bar with a gentleness that seemed strange. The fingers trembled as they held the food. "Thank you," the beggar whispered. "Kind soul. Thank you." Marcus pulled out his water bottle and set it down beside her. Then he took off his thermal blanket from his work bag. The station's lower levels got cold at night, and he used it during his breaks, but she needed it more. "Here," he said, placing the blanket near her. "Stay warm." Before the beggar could respond, a heavy hand grabbed Marcus's shoulder and spun him around. The Krellian enforcer from earlier loomed over him with all 4 arms crossed over his massive chest. His yellow eyes narrowed. "You stupid human," the Krellian growled. "That one is trouble. She'd been here for weeks. Brings bad energy.
Bad luck."
"You stay away." Marcus pulled his shoulder free. "She's just hungry." "What's the harm in helping?" The Krellian snorted. "You're a funeral human. But I warn you, strange things happen around that one. Ships malfunction. People disappear. You've been told?" The enforcer stomped away, shaking his large head. Marcus looked back at the beggar, but she had already wrapped herself in the thermal blanket with the food held close. For just a moment, as she shifted position, a beam of light from an overhead lamp caught her face beneath the hood. Her eyes glowed, not reflected light. Actual silver luminescence, like moonlight captured in living form. Marcus blinked, and the moment passed. The beggar tucked herself deeper into the shadows. He stood there for a few seconds longer, then turned and walked back to his quarters. Maybe the Krellian was right. Maybe he should have minded his own business. But the image of those glowing silver eyes stayed with him. That night, Marcus lay on his narrow bunk staring at the ceiling of his tiny quarters. The room was barely large enough for a bed, a small storage locker, and a portable cleaning unit. He could hear the hum of the station's power. Generators through the walls and the occasional clang of pipes expanding and contracting. He was almost asleep when he heard his door lock. Disengage. Marcus sat up fast, reaching for the plasma wrench he kept beside his bed for protection. The door slid open, and 3 figures in dark combat armor stormed in. They moved with military precision. 2 grabbed Marcus and slammed him against the wall, while the third swept the room with a handheld scanner. "Where is she?" the lead figure demanded. The voice was filtered through a helmet, making it sound mechanical and cold. "Where's who?" Marcus gasped as one armored hand pressed against his throat. "Don't play stupid." "The beggar. The hooded one. You were seen giving her aid. Where did she go?" "I don't know," Marcus choked out. "I just gave her food. That's all. I swear." The scanner beeped negative. The lead figure stepped closer, and Marcus could see his own frightened reflection in the black visor. "Listen carefully, human. If you see her again, you report it immediately. You contact this code." He held up a data chip. "You do not help her. You do not speak to her. You report her location, or you die. Understand?" Marcus nodded as much as the hand on his throat would allow. The figures released him, and he collapsed to the floor, gasping. They left as quickly as they came. The door slid shut behind them, leaving Marcus alone in the dim light. Breathing hard with his heart racing, he sat on the floor for a long time trying to process what just happened. Someone sent professional soldiers after a beggar. That made no sense. Unless she was not just a beggar. Unless she was something much more important or dangerous. Marcus picked up the data chip from where it had fallen. He looked at it for a moment, then threw it across the room, where it clattered into a corner. Whatever was happening, it was bigger than him. Bigger than this station, and somehow by showing simple kindness to a stranger in an alley, Marcus Chen had stepped into the middle of it. Part 2. The revelation. Marcus showed up to work the next morning with bruises on his ribs and a split lip from where he had been thrown against the wall. His supervisor, a bored Torian who barely looked up from his datapad, asked no questions. Injuries were common on Port Nexus. People minded their own business if they wanted to stay alive all day while Marcus repaired broken air filters and rewired damaged control panels. His mind kept returning to the night before. Professional soldiers hunting a beggar. It made no sense. He tried to focus on his work, but the questions would not leave him alone. During his lunch break, Marcus made a decision. He needed to know more. He started carefully asking around the station. At a parts supplier run by a Kelroth trader, he mentioned seeing soldiers in dark armor. The trader's ears flattened against his furry head, and he quickly said he knew nothing. At a food stall, Marcus asked an old Vorjan cook if anything strange had been happening lately. The Vorjan's 3 eyes darted around nervously before leaning in close. "You asking about the hooded one?" the cook whispered in his rattling voice. Marcus nodded. "She appeared 3 weeks ago. Since then, 6 different mercenary groups swept through looking for something or someone. Then military types started showing up. Smart people, stay out of it. You should too, human." "What's so special about her?" Marcus asked. The Vorjan shook his head. "Above my pay grade, friend? Way above. Now go. You drawing attention just being here?" Marcus left with more questions than answers. He wandered through the station, keeping to the maintenance corridors where he was less likely to be noticed. He told himself he should forget about it. Go back to his simple life of fixing pipes and staying invisible. But he found himself walking back toward that alley. She was still there, huddled in the same spot, wrapped in his thermal blanket. But this time, she was not alone. 3 armed thugs in mismatched armor surrounded her. Marcus recognized the markings on their gear. Zathrian Syndicate, one of the many criminal organizations that operated on the station. "Come on now," one thug said in rough common. His species was unclear beneath the scarred armor. "Boss wants to talk to you. You come quiet. We don't have to hurt you." The hooded figure pressed herself against the wall, making herself even smaller. She said nothing. "Guess we do this the hard way," another thug said, reaching for her. Marcus did not think. He just moved. He activated the plasma cutter he carried for work, and the tool hummed to life with a bright blue flame. Marcus stepped into the alley, holding it in front of him like a weapon, which technically it was if you got close enough. "She's with me," Marcus said with much more confidence than he felt. "Walk away." The thugs turned. One laughed. Human, you got no idea what you stepping into. Maybe not. But I got a plasma cutter that burns at 3,000 degrees. Want to find out what that does to your armor? It was a bluff. Sort of. The plasma cutter could definitely hurt them, but Marcus had never used it as a weapon, and the thugs had actual guns. But sometimes confidence was enough. The thugs looked at each other, then at the plasma cutter, then back at Marcus. Not worth it, the first thug muttered. Boss didn't pay us enough for this mess. They backed away, keeping their hands near their weapons but not drawing them. Marcus stood his ground until they disappeared. Around the corner, then his hands started shaking, and he had to deactivate the plasma cutter before he dropped it. The beggar spoke from behind him. You should not have done that. Her voice was clearer now, stronger. Marcus turned to look at her. Those guys will come back with more friends, he said. You need to move. Find somewhere safer. There is nowhere safe for me, she said. Not on this station. Not anywhere. You have put yourself in great danger, human. They will come for you now, too. Yeah, well, they already did last night. So I guess I'm already in this mess. Who are you really? The figure was quiet for a long moment. Then slowly she began unwrapping the cloth from one of her hands. As the dirty bandages fell away, Marcus saw skin that shimmered like moonlight. Delicate silver patterns flowed across her hand in designs that seemed to move and shift in the dim light. Marcus stared. You're Luminori. She looked up at him through the shadows of her hood. You know of my people. Everyone knows about the Luminari. You never leave your home system. You're the most advanced species in the galaxy. People say you're basically myths. Marcus stepped closer. What's a Luminari doing as a beggar on Port Nexus? Hesitated, then reached up with both hands and slowly pushed back her. Who'd? Marcus forgot to breathe. Her. Face was ethereal with features too perfect to seem real. High cheekbones. Smooth skin that glowed softly with that same silver luminescence. Hair that looked like spun starlight. But it was her eyes that captured him. Silver irises that held depth and intelligence and something else. Fear. She was thin, too thin. Her face showed signs of exhaustion and hunger. Whatever had brought her here had cost her greatly. My name is Lyria, she said. Lyria of the 7th Chorus. I fled my homeworld because I discovered a truth that powerful forces wish to keep hidden. If I am caught, I will be silenced forever. What kind of truth? Marcus asked. Lyria's glowing eyes met his. The Galactic Concordat has been suppressing technology that could provide unlimited clean energy to all species. Free power for everyone. No more scarcity. No more control through resource distribution. My people discovered this years ago, but the Concordat pressured our leaders to stay silent. To let the oppression continue, Marcus felt the weight of her words. And you couldn't accept that. My people value harmony above all else. They chose peace over justice. But I could not watch billions suffer when the solution exists. So I stole the data and ran. I have been running for months. That's why everyone's after you. Yes, the Concordat will do anything to protect their power structure. They have branded me a traitor and a thief. They will kill me and destroy the evidence. She looked at him with those ancient eyes. You should forget you saw me, human. Walk away while you still can. I am grateful for your kindness, but I cannot let you sacrifice yourself for me. Before Marcus could respond, a massive explosion tore through the end of the alley. Fire and smoke filled the space. Through the chaos, Marcus saw figures emerging in heavy combat armor much more advanced than the thugs from before. These were professional soldiers, and they wore the insignia of the Galactic Concordat itself. Their one soldier shouted, pointing at Lyria, "Target acquired. Take her alive if possible." Marcus grabbed Lyria's hand. Her skin felt warm despite its cool glow. "Run," he said. They ran deeper into the alley as weapons fire scorched the walls behind them. Marcus pulled her into a maintenance access hatch that he knew led to the service tunnels. The soldiers shouted orders as they pursued. As they fled through the darkness, Marcus realized the full scope of what was happening. The galactic government itself was hunting her. This was not just some criminal matter or local dispute. This was a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of power, and somehow he, a nobody maintenance worker from Earth, had gotten caught in the middle of it. Part 3. The escape Marcus pulled Lyria through the narrow maintenance tunnel as boots thundered behind them. The service passages of Port Nexus formed a maze that most people never saw. Pipes ran along the walls, dripping condensation. Exposed wiring sparked occasionally. The air smelled like metal and industrial lubricant. This way, Marcus gasped, pulling her around a corner. Behind them, he heard the soldiers, calling to each other, coordinating their search. Professional, organized, dangerous, they squeezed through a gap between two massive coolant pipes. Marcus knew these tunnels from years of maintenance work. He had fixed leaks in passages so cramped he had to crawl. He had traced power failures through sections that did not appear on any official station map. That knowledge was the only advantage they had. Lyria followed without complaint, even though she was clearly exhausted. Her luminescent skin provided a soft glow in the darkness, which was both helpful and dangerous. It meant they could see where they were going, but it also meant they could be spotted from a distance. "Stop here," Marcus whispered. They crouched behind a junction box in a small alcove. He put a finger to his lips. 30 seconds later, two soldiers passed within meters of their hiding spot. Their helmet-mounted lights swept across the tunnel but somehow missed the alcove. Marcus held his breath until they moved on. When the sounds faded, Lyria turned to him. Even in the dim light, her eyes glowed with that silver luminescence. "Why are you helping me?" she asked quietly. "You do not know me. You owe me nothing, yet you risk your life." Marcus thought about it. Because it's the right thing to do. Someone needed help. I helped. That's all. That is not how most species think. Most consider survival first. Self-preservation. Yet you humans seem to have this quality that defies logic. You help even when it hurts you. Maybe that makes us stupid, Marcus said with a tired smile. Or maybe it makes you remarkable. Before Marcus could respond, his communicator buzzed. He pulled it out carefully. A text message from his friend Riker. "Heard you got trouble. Safe house available. Dock 7. Access code 4472. Marcus showed it to Lyria. You can trust him. They continued through the tunnels, moving as quietly as possible. Behind them, Marcus could hear the soldiers getting closer. They were using scanning equipment. He could hear the electronic pings as the scanners swept the area. "They're tracking us somehow," Lyria said. "Probably thermal imaging or motion sensors." Marcus thought fast. They passed a coolant control station. He stopped and started opening valves. Freezing liquid nitrogen began flooding into the tunnel sections behind them, creating massive clouds of condensation and dropping the temperature dramatically. "Should mess with their thermal scanners," he said. They kept moving. At another junction, Marcus ripped open an electrical panel and crossed to power lines. Sparks flew, and the lights in that section went out. Backup systems kicked in, but the power surge confused electronic equipment for a few minutes. Lyria watched him with something like amazement. Luminary technology is far more advanced than human, but we would never think to use our own infrastructure as a weapon like this. You improvise. You adapt. You turn chaos into advantage. "We're good at making do with what we have," Marcus said. They reached a vertical shaft that led up toward the docking levels. Marcus started climbing the ladder with Lyria right behind him. His arms burned from the effort, but he pushed through. Above them, he could hear ships launching and docking. Normal station activity. People who had no idea what was happening in the tunnels below, they emerged in a storage area near Dock 7. Marcus led Lyria through stacks of cargo containers to a small, unmarked door. He entered the code Riker had sent, and the door hissed open. Inside was a workshop filled with tools and equipment. Riker stood near a workbench examining something mechanical. He was a tall human in his 50s, with gray hair and scars across his arms from decades of living rough. When he saw Marcus and Lyria, he set down his tools and crossed his arms. "Marcus, what the hell did you get yourself into?" Riker said. Then he saw Lyria's face, and his expression changed. "Is that a luminary?" "A real, actual luminary." "Her name is Lyria," Marcus said. "And yes, she's real. She needs help. Help. Do you know what kind of heat this brings down? I saw Concordat battlecruisers moving into orbit an hour ago. The whole station is crawling with their agents. And you bring her here. I didn't know where else to go. Ah! Riker stared at them both. Then he sighed heavily. All right, tell me everything. They sat, and Lyria explained about the suppressed energy technology, about the conspiracy, about how the Concordat maintained power by controlling energy distribution throughout the galaxy. With free, unlimited power, their entire authority structure would collapse. So they suppressed the technology and hunted anyone who tried to reveal it. Riker listened in silence. When she finished, he leaned back and rubbed his face. I lost my son to the energy wars on Tarsus, for he said quietly. Whole planet went to hell fighting over fusion cells. Thousands died, including my boy. And you're telling me that whole war was unnecessary? That the technology to prevent it existed? Lyria nodded. I am sorry, truly. This is why I could not stay silent. Riker stood and walked to a weapons locker. He started pulling out gear. Then I guess we're doing this. We get you off this station, and somewhere safe. Somewhere you can share that data with people who will actually do something about it. The station is locked down, Marcus said. Nothing leaves without Concordat inspection. Yeah, that's a problem, Riker admitted. Every ship gets scanned. Every passenger checked. They're looking for her. Specifically, so any disguise would need to be perfect. They sat in silence, thinking. Marcus paced the small workshop. There had to be a way. Humans had spent centuries finding ways around authority and rules. It was practically a cultural trait. What about the diplomatic transports? Marcus said suddenly. They have immunity. Concordat can't search them without creating an interstellar incident. Riker nodded slowly. There's a Seldorian delegation leaving tomorrow? But how do we get her on board? We disguise her as part of the delegation. Seldorians are humanoid enough. With the right makeup and clothes, she could pass for one. That's insane, Riker said. But he was smiling. It might actually work. Lyria looked between them. You would risk so much for someone you barely know. Ugh. Marcus met her glowing eyes. You risked everything to try to help people you'll never meet. Seems like the least we can do is help you finish what you started. They began planning. Marcus heard a sound that made his blood run cold. Station-wide alarms began blaring. A voice came over the communication system. It was a Concordat admiral speaking in the calm, measured tone of someone with absolute authority. Attention Port Nexus residents. We are searching for a fugitive who threatens galactic security. The individual is a luminary female, approximately 1.6 meters tall. Anyone providing information leading to her capture will receive 1 million credits. Anyone found harboring this fugitive will be executed as a traitor to the Galactic Concordat. This is not a request. This is law. You have been warned. The workshop went silent. 1 million credits, Riker said quietly. That's enough to buy a small moon. Marcus looked at his friend. For a moment, doubt crept into his mind. That was a life-changing amount of money. Riker caught his look and shook his head. Relax, kid. I'm not selling her out. But a lot of people will. We need to move fast. They gotta work. There was no turning back now. The whole galaxy was watching, and Marcus had made his choice. Part 4. The Gambit Marcus spent the next 12 hours assembling what might be the most desperate plan in Port Nexus history. Riker made contact with people he knew in the station's underground network. Some refused immediately. The risk was too high. The reward for turning Lyria in was too tempting. But a few agreed to help for their own reasons, Tori, an information broker who hated the Concordat for destroying her family's business, provided forged diplomatic credentials. A Vrexian doctor who believed in free access to medicine supplied synthetic skin patches that could temporarily hide luminescent features. A human hacker named Sarah agreed to create false records in the station's database showing Lyria as a registered member of the Seldorian delegation. Each person who helped did so knowing they were risking everything. In Riker's workshop, they transformed. Lyria, the synthetic skin patches dulled her natural glow. Contact lenses covered her silver eyes, making them appear dark blue like most Seldorians. They dressed her in fine robes that Seldorian merchants typically wore. Riker even found a piece of jewelry that matched Seldorian cultural style. "How do I look?" Lyria asked, turning to face Marcus. He studied her carefully. The disguise was good. Very good. But her movements were still too graceful. Too precise. Luminari moved with a fluidity that other species could not match. "You need to move differently," Marcus said. "Seldorians are more rigid, more formal. Watch me." He demonstrated the slightly stiff way Seldorians walked, the formal hand gestures they used when speaking. Lyria practiced mimicking the movements. It felt wrong to her. Luminari culture valued natural flowing movement. But she learned quickly. As they worked, Marcus talked to her about deception. About how sometimes protecting a greater truth required lying in the moment. This concept troubled Lyria deeply. Luminari society was built on absolute honesty. They believed lies corrupted the soul. But what if the lie prevents greater harm, Marcus asked. What if being truthful in this moment means the bigger truth never gets told? Lyria considered this. You humans have lived with this moral complexity far longer than my people. We isolated ourselves partly to avoid such choices. Perhaps that was cowardly. Perhaps you just value different things. Neither is wrong. They're just different. The philosophical discussion was interrupted by Riker. Transport leaves in 2 hours. We need to move. They made their way through the station using cargo tunnels and maintenance passages. Marcus and Riker flanked Lyria dressed as private security contractors. It was a common enough sight on Port Nexus that they did not attract attention. At the departure gate for Dock 12, Concordat inspectors had set up checkpoints. Every passenger was being scanned and questioned. Marcus felt his heart rate increase as they joined the line. He forced himself to breathe normally. To appear bored and slightly annoyed like any security contractor waiting in line would be, Lyria stood between them with perfect posture, playing the role of a wealthy merchant. Marcus had coached her on this. Act entitled. Act like the inspection is beneath you. People with money and status behaved differently, and inspectors often treated them with more deference. They reached the checkpoint. A Krellian inspector examined their credentials with 4 hands, while his scanner hummed. Purpose of travel, the inspector asked in a bored tone. Trade. Negotiations on Seldor Prime, Lyria said in the formal accent Marcus had taught her. These delays are quite inconvenient. The inspector barely looked at her. Everyone gets inspected. Galactic security. Marcus maintained his relaxed posture, but his hand rested casually near his sidearm. Not threatening. Just ready. The scanner beeped as it analyzed their documents. Your security contractors aren't registered in our database, the inspector said, looking at Marcus and Riker. Marcus shrugged. We're independent. Not part of any major firm. Here's our licensing. He held out a datapad with forged licenses that Sarah had created. The inspector examined them. Marcus made small talk. Complained about the pay. Made a joke about station food. Just normal conversation. The kind that made people see you as real and ordinary rather than suspicious. The inspector handed back the datapad. Everything seems in order. Safe travels. They walked toward the boarding ramp. Marcus fought the urge to look back or walk faster. Stay casual. Stay normal. Just a few more meters. Wait, a voice called out. They stopped. Marcus felt ice in his veins. He turned slowly. Riker was walking back toward them with a squad of Concordat soldiers following. Riker's face was cold and businesslike. He pointed at Lyria. That's her, Riker said. The Luminari. I claim the reward. Marcus stared at his friend in shock. The betrayal hit him like a physical blow. Riker met his eyes with no emotion showing. The soldiers raised their weapons and moved to surround them. I'm sorry, kid, Riker said, but 1 million credits. That's generational wealth. You understand? The lead soldier stepped forward. You 2 security contractors, drop your weapons. Nice and slow. Marcus felt numb. This could not be happening. Riker had seemed so committed. So angry about the conspiracy, but money changed people. Money made them forget their principles. The soldiers closed in. Marcus put his hands up slowly. Beside him, Lyria did the same. Her disguise meant nothing now. It was over. Then everything changed. The lead soldier suddenly turned and put his weapon against the commander's head. "Nobody move," the soldier said in a completely different voice. The other soldiers did the same, turning on their supposed allies. Riker grinned widely. "See, that's what we call in the business a performance." Marcus nearly collapsed with relief. "You absolute bastard. I thought you sold us out." "Had to make it convincing for the cameras," Riker said. "These fine folks aren't actually Concordat troops. They're members of the Free Colonies movement. Been wanting to stick it to the Concordat for years." The fake soldiers stripped off their armor, revealing civilian clothes underneath. One of them, an older human woman, nodded to Marcus. "We believe in what you're doing. Now get on that ship before real trouble shows up." They boarded quickly. The Seldorian diplomatic transport was elegant with polished metal walls and comfortable seating. The captain, a dignified Seldorian with copper skin, greeted them formally, then showed them to a private cabin, as the ship detached from the station. Marcus finally let himself relax. They had made it. Against all odds, they had actually made it. Lyria removed her contact lenses and peeled off the synthetic skin patches. Her natural luminescence returned. She looked at Marcus with those silver eyes. "We are not safe yet," she said quietly. "The Concordat has battle cruisers in orbit. They can destroy us before we reach the jump point." Marcus felt his relief fade. Can this ship defend itself? It has diplomatic immunity, but that may not matter if they're desperate enough. She pulled a small device from her robes. "I have been carrying something. A transmission code for an ancient luminary beacon. If I activate it, the signal will broadcast across all frequencies. Every ship, every station, every planet in range will receive the data about the suppressed technology. It's good, right?" "That's what we want." "Yes, but it will also reveal my exact location. Every Concordat ship within a light year will converge on us. They will destroy this ship and everyone on it to prevent the information from spreading further." Marcus looked at the device. "So we can save the galaxy, but probably die doing it." "Yes, when you put it that way, it sounds almost easy." Lyria smiled slightly. "You humans have a strange relationship with death. You fear it, but you also face it for causes you believe in. My people value life above all else. We would never take such a risk." "Maybe that's why this had to be a human helping you," Marcus said. "Because we're just dumb enough to try." The ship's alarm suddenly blared. The captain's voice came over the intercom. 3 Concordat battlecruisers are moving to intercept. They're demanding we stop for inspection." Marcus and Lyria looked at each other. Decision time. Play it safe and hope for the best, or take the chance now while they still could. Lyria held up the device. "What do you think we should do?" Marcus thought about all the people dying in wars over energy resources. About Riker's son. About billions living in artificial scarcity while the solution existed. He thought about simple human stubbornness. The refusal to accept injustice just because it was easier. "I think we light up the galaxy," Marcus said. Part 5, the Stan Lyria activated the beacon with hands that barely trembled. The small device hummed to life with that characteristic silver glow of luminary technology. Ancient code began streaming outward at faster than light speeds, riding on quantum wavelengths that no current technology could block or interfere with. Within seconds, the transmission reached the nearest communication relays. Within minutes, it bounced across the galaxy, touching every major hub, every trade station, every inhabited world. The suppressed energy specifications flowed across countless screens. Evidence of the Concordat's decades-long conspiracy appeared in news, feeds, and academic databases and government servers simultaneously. Galaxy learned the truth all at once. On the bridge of the Seldorian diplomatic transport, Captain Therese watched her scanners with growing alarm. The 3 Concordat battlecruisers were accelerating toward them. Their weapons were powering up. "They're going to fire," she said over the ship's intercom. All passengers brace for impact. In their cabin, Marcus grabbed Lyria's hand. Her skin still glowed with that soft luminescence even through the fear in her eyes. If these were their last moments, at least they had done something meaningful. At least they had tried. "Thank you," Lyria said. "For everything. For seeing me as more than a beggar. For risking your life. For believing that justice matters more than safety. Thank you for trusting a random human," Marcus replied. "For letting me be part of something bigger than myself." The battle cruisers closed in. Weapon locks engaged. Then something impossible happened. New ships began appearing on the sensors. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. Vessels from every corner of the galaxy dropping out of jump space. Taurian merchant fleets. Vrexian colony ships. Human freight haulers. Kelrath passenger liners. Even some smaller Concordat patrol ships, whose crews had apparently decided to defect. They positioned themselves between the diplomatic transport and the battle cruisers. A defensive wall of ships from 100 different species. Captain Therese stared at her screens in disbelief. "I don't understand. How did they all get here so fast?" Marcus understood. They were already watching. After the transmission went out, people knew something was happening here. They came to see, and now they're choosing sides. A message appeared on the main view screen. It was from a grizzled Taurian captain commanding a massive freight hauler. "Concordat vessels, this is Captain Vex of the independent ship, Aurora's Pride. That diplomatic transport is under our protection. You want to destroy them, you're going to have to go through all of us. And the whole galaxy is watching what you do next. Choose wisely." The Concordat battlecruisers slowed. Their weapons stayed charged, but they did not fire. The standoff stretched for long, tense minutes. Then one of the Concordat ships broke formation and jumped away. The other two held position for a few more seconds before they too retreated. The admiral in charge had apparently decided that destroying hundreds of ships in front of billions of witnesses was not worth it. A cheer erupted across the protective fleet. Ships flashed their running lights in celebration. Humanity's habit of stubbornly doing the right thing regardless of consequences had apparently inspired others to do the same. Over the following hours, the galaxy exploded with activity. News networks ran constant coverage of the leaked data. Scientists confirmed the energy technology was real and revolutionary. Governments faced immediate pressure from their citizens, demanding answers. The Concordat's carefully constructed authority began crumbling in real time. Protest movements erupted on 1,000 worlds. Not violent revolutions, but peaceful demands for change. The conspiracy had relied on secrecy, and once that secrecy was broken, the system could not sustain itself. Some Concordat officials tried to deny everything, but the evidence was too overwhelming. Others resigned immediately, trying to distance themselves in their cabin. Marcus and Lyria watched the coverage in stunned silence. They had expected to die. Instead, they had started something that might actually change. Everything, a delegation of captains from the protective fleet requested to meet with Lyria. She agreed, though she was exhausted and still weak from weeks of running. Marcus accompanied her to the meeting room. 20 representatives from different species crowded the space. They looked at Lyria with respect and curiosity. A Vrexian captain clicked his mandibles and spoke first. "On behalf of the independent ships, we wanted to thank you. What you did took courage. We're organizing a convoy to take you anywhere you wish to go. The Concordat won't risk attacking such a large group." A human captain nodded. "We're also offering protection to anyone else who wants to speak out about what they know. This is bigger than just energy technology. There are other secrets that need light. You've shown us it's possible to stand up to power." Over the next week, the convoy grew to over 300 ships. They traveled together toward neutral space where a new galactic assembly was being organized. Not controlled by the Concordat, but by independent worlds and species, who wanted genuine cooperation rather than forced compliance. Marcus worked alongside, the others using his maintenance skills to keep the fleet's aging, ships operational. It felt good to be useful, to be part of something meaningful. Lyria spent her time being interviewed by journalists and speaking with scientists who wanted to understand the Luminari technology. One evening, Marcus found her standing alone on an observation deck watching the stars. her natural luminescence reflected in the transparent aluminum, creating a double image of her ethereal features. "How are you holding up?" Marcus asked, joining her. "I am well. Tired but well." She turned to him. "I have been offered a position helping to implement the new energy systems. They want me to work with scientists from multiple species to ensure the technology is distributed fairly." "That's great. That's exactly what you hoped for." "What about you, Marcus Chen? What will you do now?" "The galaxy knows your name. You are being called a hero." Marcus laughed. "I'm no hero. I just helped someone who needed it." "That is what makes humans remarkable," Lyria said. "You do not see your own exceptional nature. Any other species would have calculated the risks and walked away. But you stopped to give food to a beggar. Such a small, simple act of kindness. Yet it changed everything." "Maybe that's the lesson, though," Marcus said. "That the small, simple acts matter. That choosing to help one person can ripple outward in ways we never expect." Lyria reached out and took his hand. Her luminescent skin was warm against his. "The new assembly has also asked me to invite you to join their human representative team. They want people who understand diplomacy not through formal training, but through genuine compassion. People who see others as individuals rather than statistics." Marcus considered this. A few weeks ago, he had been a nobody maintenance worker fixing pipes in the bowels of a forgotten station. Now he was being offered a chance to help rebuild galactic civilization. "I don't know if I'm qualified for that kind of work," he admitted. "You are qualified precisely because you do not think you are. The best leaders are often those who do not seek power but have it thrust upon them because others recognize their integrity." She smiled. "Besides, you taught me that sometimes we must accept help, even when we think we do not deserve it. Perhaps you should follow your own wisdom." Marcus smiled back. "When did you get so good at arguing?" "I learned from a stubborn human who would not take no for an answer." They stood together, watching the convoy of ships flying in formation. Hundreds of species united not by force, but by choice. Working together because someone had shown them it was possible in the distance through the view screen. Marcus could see Earth's sun among the countless stars. His homeworld was out there, a species barely a few centuries into space exploration. Not the strongest or the fastest or the most advanced, but humans had something else. They had the stubborn, ridiculous, beautiful tendency to help strangers even when it made no logical sense. To choose compassion over calculation. To believe that one person's actions could matter even against overwhelming odds. 3 months later, Marcus stood on a platform in front of representatives from 800 worlds. The new galactic coalition was being formally established. Beside him, Lyria glowed softly in her formal robes, now representing her people with their full blessing. The Luminari had emerged from isolation inspired by one of their own, who had risked everything for justice. Other advanced species were sharing technologies they had hoarded for centuries. The old power structures based on scarcity and control were being dismantled. It would not be easy. There would be resistance and setbacks. Some former Concordat officials were already trying to organize opposition. Some species were reluctant to give up advantages they had held for generations, but the momentum had shifted. The galaxy had seen what was possible when people chose to stand together. When they chose courage over fear, as Marcus prepared to give his speech, he thought back to that moment in the alley. The choice to stop and help a dirty beggar huddled against a wall. Such a small decision. Such an ordinary act of human kindness, and yet it had changed everything. He began speaking about the values the coalition would be built on: cooperation, transparency, the belief that all species deserved access to resources and technology, the simple, radical idea that helping others was not weakness, but strength. The audience listened, some skeptical, others hopeful, all of them willing to try. Lyria stood beside him, glowing like a beacon, a symbol of what was possible when someone chose to speak truth, even knowing the cost. Marcus represented something too, the human quality that the galaxy was beginning to understand and respect, that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe was not advanced technology or military might or political cunning. Sometimes it was just one person choosing to do the right thing. even when it was hard, even when it was dangerous, even when it would be so much easier to look away, because that was what humans did. They saw someone who needed help, and they helped. They saw injustice, and they fought it. They faced impossible odds, and they tried anyway. Not because they were stronger or smarter or better than other species, but because they believed that every individual mattered, that every act of kindness rippled outward, that the choice to care about others was what made life meaningful. As Marcus finished his speech and the representatives erupted in applause, it caught Lyria's eye. She smiled at him with those silver eyes full of warmth and gratitude. They had started with a simple transaction in a dirty alley. Food and water and a blanket offered without expectation of reward. They had ended by inspiring a galaxy, and somewhere on 1,000 worlds, people who had been hungry or cold or forgotten looked up with new hope, because they had learned that even in the darkest places, even when all seemed lost, there were still those who would stop to help. There were still humans. The end.